probably should have all picked up the zine, the limited edition zine on the way in. You've kind of not picked it up on the way out. So Mark, this is the latest in more than 35 years of music making. I was calling discogs and going through my own collection myself, and you see some of your productions up on the screen there. So many collaborations, genres and styles, and but you've been based in Sydney for quite a long time now. So how did this record start to pull together and start forming up?
I've been here 20 years now.
It's a long time in Australia.
Thanks to Zawada. But yeah, this record started in. I wrote all the music before 2020, but the idea of this record started in 2020 when Tom just emailed me when we were all locked down, kind of through that period. I guess it's just a "Have you all right, mate?" It's all a bit mad type of email. And then he just said, "Look, we're all going to be locked away for a while, so if you've got any music, send it through." I guess he was wondering what he was going to do with his time, like everybody else was, for the next few years. So I guess he would have had tours planned and things. So yeah, I thought, well, I want to write for him. I want to write some new stuff for him, really. But then I was in the middle of doing something else. I was going to do another different kind of album, and so I just sent him 20. I was like, it'd probably have fun if I just sent him 20 random things.
Yeah.
And in the spanning 10 years of like time, because I write all the time basically, and the things just sit there, and some point they make sense.
So when then did you bring in Jonathan? When did this change from being a record to being now this bigger piece?
You're looking at me, so I assume you
No.
I think that was a gradual, or for me it seemed like it was a fairly gradual thing. I think Mark and I have been collaborators and also friends for quite a long time now. So Mark routinely sends me what he's working on, and he started sending me the stuff as Tom was sending back versions with vocals on them and things like that. And I immediately just started sort of sticking ideas. We have a collaborative online whiteboard thing called on this platform called Miro. And I started just sort of throwing things on there, basically just things that were visuals that were sort of popping into my mind, or ideas or stories that were sort of popping into my mind as I was listening to the music. I think it really wasn't clear even early. I think when you first started sending me stuff, it wasn't clear if it was just going to be a little EP or a few songs, or it took a while before it became an album. And then over the course of the project for a long time, it was maybe I sort of saw what I was working on as potentially art installation pieces for a gallery or something like that. And it wasn't until probably halfway through that process that it sort of started congealing around video work, and then probably pretty late in the game where we were convinced that, it took me a while to be convinced it might work as a whole sort of viewing experience as a film.
Did the work you were getting back from Jonathan start to affect the evolution of the music?
Yeah, it helped me see that certain tracks worked as a whole. There were some tracks I was like, I like these tracks, I don't know whether they really fit the album. I'm just kind of working away on them, and then I start trying to get a bit of an order going. But it's so hard because you just focus on the individual songs. And then when I started singing, it was really useful for me, because you're working away for like crazy hours. Like, it's like months go by working on one song. So sometimes you lose the plot and you lose the song. Is this going to work? And you have to start again. And then Jonathan's working on stuff, and it's a nice vibe. If somebody else is working on the same thing, and then he sends you something amazing, and it gives me a little lift. Because then I can then see it really coming together, and this is actually kind of making sense as it's evolving from Jonathan's side as well. But it's actually really nice to work in that way. Like, it's pretty rare. Normally the music gets done, and then there has to be sort of meetings about, we need to make marketing videos, and there's usually a scramble to try and get them done before release. Whereas this, Warp are really good, and we just managed to kind of find a way we were just doing it. essentially without any of that in mind. So that it rarely happens this way where you can actually work on something for a long period and not worry about whether it's, because we didn't know that we should put Tom in one of the videos or not, and that was a discussion for a while. It's like, should we put him in? Then it doesn't feel like we need to put him in. If we put him in, it could just feel like a music video, which is not a bad thing. He's been in some great videos, but does this feel right for this? It could feel a little bit like we're just putting him into his face. And
then we sort of face the problem if we're putting him in, we need to put you in too, and you hate.
I hate being in front of people and I hate having my picture taken. So yeah, I mean, Tom was happy. I think we did think about doing a video, and there was some plans, and he was going to be in it, but very much not like it was going to fit this tone.
Yeah, we did. We went quite a long way down. I think that was sort of not that. It wasn't even that early in the project. In some respects, it was fairly early, but yeah, we went quite a long way down doing a traditional sort of video, and then I think when we abandoned that idea, and I feel like we both had a lot of conversations about this, but we really just committed to the idea of, well, let's just treat this like, or at least from my perspective, I'm just going to treat this like an art project, and I'm going to do it all myself, and we're not going to involve conversations with other people that sort of, sidetrack you, or things start getting much more complicated as soon as you start involving other people, and it didn't feel like, it felt like there was a great opportunity here to just not do that and see where it led us.
Jonathan, you started working with Mark back in 2009. I think we might just pop up this track from 2009. Do you want to tell us about this, and then we'll play it and see? It's just going to take a little while to come up because of the.
I'm not sure. Is this a sound album?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think this actually is like 2015. This one, something. I don't know.
Yeah,
somewhere around here. But we did start working together much earlier than that in 2009.
Well, let's just play this and then we'll. Jonathan, I think what's interesting seeing that now is that a lot of those same themes around light and landscape and the generative landscape really come through. Do you want to talk a little bit how your process might have changed? Technologies have obviously changed.
Yeah. I mean, watching that back, I'm just struck by all the things I should fix. All the problems with it. I mean, at that time, it was all sort of procedural landscape generation stuff, and I remember that whole project being an incredible technical challenge for me in terms of just practical stuff to do with rendering video and rendering very dense 3D procedural kind of video material like that. But to be honest, I think sort of the biggest thing that I got out of that, I mean, I feel like Mark and I had been working together for like 5 or 6 years prior on other releases that you've done, but I think when I'd made that and you responded so positively to it, and I don't know, there was something about that particular piece of work, I felt like there was a place I was getting to with what I was doing and with what you were doing, where the two things were coming together and sort of becoming a bit more than the sum of their parts, and that there was something I wanted to head towards, but I couldn't do it on my own, and that I sort of felt like once it was combined with Mark's amazing music, it sort of became this bigger thing, and then it was sort of a challenge for me to keep up with that technically and try to get there in terms of my methods. And
So some of the questions coming in here on the Slido. There's a few about the use of AI or generative AI tools within the visuals. What's your sense of how those have evolved, and there's some questions about how you feel about it. Obviously, as creators and artists, we have conflicted positions, and Mark's obviously we've all been in electronic music and generative music for a very long time, but this is also caught up now in monolithic capitalism as well, big corporate exploitation. So, do you want to unpack that?
In a couple of minutes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel horrible about it too, but at the same time, I've used it, and I mean, I think Mark and I, we were working over the course of this project. It's taken sort of 4 to 5 years. I was working with AI and generative AI tools before that as well, and sort of in that process, we had a lot of long conversations about this as we kind of, there's material that we'd made, and then the technology sort of lurched forward really dramatically over the last 2 years, I suppose, and so we have to reevaluate. Is there still a place for it? And I guess ultimately for me, I feel like a lot of the things in what I was already working on, at least in terms of the visual concepts, sort of were strengthened by the conflicts I was having with that technology. And as you say, I've been drawn over the whole course of my career. I've been drawn to technology and sort of exploring all sorts of new methods for making visuals. And to have that get to a point, as you've described, where you're sort of exploring it and then suddenly you're confronted with all of the kind of social, economic ramifications of what that means when it's exponentially faster than you could have kind of imagined. It becomes it's a challenging sort of thing, but I think, there's a bunch of AI techniques in there that sort of span back from 5 years ago to some other, more mild AI methods that for interpolation, a bunch of technical stuff as well that are more recent. It was, you and I spoke about it a lot, and there's one song in there, or one video in there it's sort of entirely AI generated, and that I really struggled with including, and we had lots of conversations where I wanted to pull it out, but I think both you and Tom both had really positive responses to that. I remember Tom saying it was exactly what he sort of envisaged in the music. And I don't know how I feel about that, I don't know how. Part of me feels like I wish these tools sort of didn't exist. I think there's sort of a lot of negatives, and a lot of negatives for particularly younger generations. But at the same time, I don't know, you look back and you kind of look at the trajectory of technology and art, and you kind of have to assume that people are clever enough to find good ways of using new technologies.
Mark, musically.
Yeah, musically, I've not been tempted to use it at all. I've been watching it a little bit, but I think I was just kind of like, I'm not really that interested. I'm too old school for it, and I'm just kind of like, well, somebody will tap me on the shoulder at some point and say, Mark, you're done. Just chill out and just sleep out. You're done. So I'm a little bit like that, but I'm interested in. I'm interested in the technology and what it can do. Some people have tried some things with it, making music that's had some interesting results. But I guess at the moment it's moved more towards just a few commands and it just flicks out something. You can get an R&B beat or some dance. It seems to be able to do quite basic stuff quite easily already. But I make music because I like doing that stuff. I don't want it to. I like the reason I go to the studio is to try and make the elements and struggle and not do it easily. And so for me, I've not been that interested in it musically, but I'm sure musically it's a little bit behind the visual. I guess it's been moving forward a bit more, but the visual thing is where it hit first, isn't it?
It's sort of, I guess for me, listening to you speak about it, I think I agree with everything you've said there. It sort of so quickly passed through this period of being interesting to being all-encompassing. It very quickly went through, I think at the beginning of this project, it was still in that nascent phase where you could ask it to do things and you'd get crazy, weird, unimaginable material out the other end of it. Now you can talk to Instagram and you get exactly what you want and it looks incredibly perfect. There's no struggle there and there's nothing interesting that comes out of it. So, I've sort of abandoned using it over the last year for that reason. But it was, as a piece of technology, I think that's, we've spoken about this, like that's what you kind of, that can sort of using something new or a new tool or a new thing that you don't know quite how it works and you get some weird result back, that can be quite motivating and inspiring in a lot of instances. I think the problem is that AI just happens, it's improved so, or whatever way you want to call it, but it's accelerated so quickly that it's jumped from being interesting to being unbelievably precise and perfect far too quickly for, now I feel like it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah, and there's a different aspect to like with the second from last video that Jonathan, it's AI generated, but it's not generated off of just the internet, is it?
No. Yeah.
So some people have, there's various areas people have seemed to be kind of putting their opinion in where it's like, well, there's the environmental aspect, which is bad, which I guess looks bad, and it looks like it uses ridiculous amounts of water just to do a basic Google that people are doing now. So there's that aspect, which obviously is very worrying for everybody. Then there's taking everybody's work, and the fact that the tech companies have just done what they normally do. They just take everything, and then nobody's getting credited. And it's been hard enough with music and art with that all along anyway. So that's obviously another worry. And I can see why people get really pissed off if there's any mention of AI in any project, because there's lots of alarming aspects to it. So yeah, but I think if you use it, if you can find, a lot of people have said about this project, they're like, well, you can just press a couple of buttons now and you can get something like this. I mean, you couldn't then when you were doing it. That's a certain, and I don't think you can now.
Yeah, not to the exact same precise degree. And I think overall, I think that's where I landed in terms of this piece is, that is exactly what I was exploring in some of the visual themes, is the relationship between labour and art and commerce and society. And, they all sound a little bit arty or whatever, but that on re-evaluation, there's no way I could explore. It just felt disingenuous to sort of be talking about that in 2025 when the thing's coming out and say, but we're not going to talk about AI, or I'm going to ignore AI in that. I think that's sort of ultimately where I felt like it had a place.
Yeah, and in the robot painting video, there's AI very early, the earliest use of, one of the more early use of you using it. The background shifting AI, and then the front is sort of you designing CGI. There's something about the contrast of that we liked. And I remember at the time we was going, well, we'll probably replace that at some point. And then the video evolved more and more, and then the themes evolved more and more, where Jonathan was going through this struggle. I mean, one thing I remember you saying was that many technologies have come along, and I always feel like I can beat them, and it's like, I don't think I can beat this one. And I was trying to be encouraging, going, yeah, but you could get it to spit out. You could train it on your work, and it could spit out something like what you do. But there's so many moves you're making in each video from all your experience over the years. So it's not going to wipe you out quite yet.
Or a couple more months.
So there's plenty of great questions here, but one of them, beyond what seems like a limited cinema release in the next few days, what is the life cycle of this visual or audio-visual part of this project? Album will live on. How does, and some of the clips have gone up on YouTube already, but this sort of limited release, how does that work? And someone else has asked, can you imagine a label other than Warp helping make this happen? Which also begs the new question of what are labels now for now that in the music space? So triple play there. Jonathan. Mark.
I mean, in terms of the future sort of prospects for the film, I'm very, very happy that it's having the release it's having in the cinemas, we're doing it on one day or 2 days, however long it's going on for. I'm really happy with that. I think, Mark and I have discussed this a lot as well, how you get people to have a genuine experience with music anymore, and when everything's been, when we've talked about this, like even with Warp, the marketing process is really, you're just talking to a social media team, you're not talking to a marketing team. I mean, no offense to them, they know how to market things, but it's all just social media. And that is, 6 seconds is not what Mark made. Like, when I listen to the music, it is a whole album, and you have to listen to it as an album in this sort of tradition of incredibly moving and great albums that have affected me over my life. So I'm quite happy for the film to just be available to people that want to turn up and see the film and have that experience. I think there's something about making the concerted effort to come out, sit down, commit yourself to something that changes your emotional space a little and makes you receptive to maybe some of the things that we're doing here, attempting to do, at least in the film. I'm happy for it to just be that and be gone. And if you saw it, you got to see it, and if you didn't, you didn't.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, I was just saying really, and I mean, part of you wants to for more people to see it. After all the work that went in, especially for Jonathan, we didn't really feel like we wanted to end up on YouTube. And it's like, but there's not that many other good options like streaming services. I guess you could try and get on Apple or Netflix, or there's not like a kind of, there's not many more arty in between ones. There's like a gap, and this doesn't really fit. Like it's not looks like a normal sort of art film, but kind of is. It's something that I hope will evolve. We've had a few suggestions, so we'll see. We'll see what comes up, but yeah, I think for now it will just sit there. I mean, then with the kind of label side, I mean, I guess Warp have been great, and they've always been forward. They leave their artists alone basically to kind of they know what to do, and they trust. They trust us to kind of get on with whatever, and they don't really get involved because they know what can happen. And then we present it, and then I was actually amazed that we finished it. We organised a screening in London because somebody thought, well, they thought it worked more as a whole. They weren't sure what we're going to do with it and how we're going to present it. And then I think maybe one or two people at Warp had seen one clip. Not many of them had heard the album. It had been mastered at that point. The boss had not seen anything. So
Best way, right?
Yeah. It's pretty good going, really. I mean, I thought they must have passed it around. But I think that's why they're a great label.
Well, I'm just going to finish with a simple question. What did it feel like, listing and seeing it with 380 other people in a social event, given that, streaming and all of this is so not social? This is such a different vibe. How did it feel?
Pretty weird. Pretty weird. I mean, really exciting, a really weird mixture of things for us, I guess. I'd seen it last week in a smaller cinema, which I think helped. So at least I had a feeling, well, actually, this does actually work. We're just hoping that it would hold people's attention. So I'd seen it last week and nobody walked out, and there was friends and family, so it would have been a bold move. And I know some of the people there, they're there for me in support, and it might not have been their cup of tea. But at least I got to kind of see it, and I don't know whether I'd get a switch off. But I did last week, and then I did again, tonight. So yeah, it's a nice end to a very long project. I guess it's like this is today, and then tomorrow the album's out, and then I'm going to disappear for a while.
Jonathan?
Yeah, for me, I think we only caught up maybe 3 times in the period that we were working on this in real life. Otherwise, we were just in our own spots. I only met Tom for the first time after it was all finished in real life. Everything else was done remotely. So it's quite odd being out here amongst people in a real environment watching it. I was unbelievably nervous and really, I just sort of was like, oh, well, I'm not going to watch it because that's too hard to do, to sit in a room full of people and watch it. And then it dawned on me that if I didn't watch it, I would never get a chance to see it on a big screen, so I had to sit down and watch it with everybody. But yeah, for me, really up until a few days ago, the whole time my goal was just, does Mark feel this is right? Does he feel like I'm representing the music? And I never really thought of an audience greater than Mark, and to some extent Tom, I guess, during that whole process. And so, yeah, but then that switch flipped over the last couple of days, and I got horribly nervous. So yeah, it's great. It's a weird feeling. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. We've got to clear out now for the next screening. We've got 2 more screenings tonight and another one on Saturday. We might see you back here on the weekend for our Mecca Anime Fest or Forest Swords. So we've got a Forest Swords show here with visuals in June, or in July you saw our trailer for our Double Vision Music and Screen Festival with live sets from Honey Smack, who will be remixing some of the early rave kind of videos from our Cyberthon archive collection, as well as Penelope tracks and more. Remember we have merch and exclusive prints from Jonathan and Mark, and both here to sign your records. And do not forget the zine. But one final thing. there were coins in that. And there's a little secret thing I think we're going to tell you about with the coins, Mark. Is that right?
Oh yeah, there is. We made 400 coins. The coin you see spinning in one of the videos, and they're slowly. We've kind of been trying to tease it for a while. We didn't really want people to like immediately jump on it because we want to sort of build over the rest of the year. So yeah, so there's been there's an Instagram account. If you follow Tall Tales, you'll be able to find the account that's posting the videos. It's pretty obvious now.
And then you just got to go and find the coins.
Yeah, and they're being hidden at least 200 around the world in like in various spots, which shows lighthouses, interesting stones.
Don't do it all. We'll be on Reddit in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, but there's already some up, so you can see the basic thing. And then, yeah, I'm going to try and get them as many places as we can. Various people at Wharf and friends, when they've been going on holidays. Drop them in
Insanely,
places.
some people have already found them as well.
Yeah, I think five
It's
of
the
them.
internet,
Tom
right?
fans
Yeah.
are very committed. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.